Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel on finding your path to your best emotional and physical health, and a continuation of this series on healing from complex PTSD and some of the things that go along with it. So stick with me here, and we're going to kind of discuss some things about managing kind of abandonment depression that goes on with childhood trauma. So before I get into that, don't forget to download my 5 free videos to help you on your way to improving your overall emotional and physical health. And also, don't forget to hit subscribe so you can get notified when new videos come out once or twice a week. And feel free to connect with me on the website if you feel you need a little bit more coaching around some of these things. We can certainly get you set up with that. So without further ado, let me get into today's topic, which is about managing the abandonment depression. And we've been talking about all of these cycles of inner critic and feelings that kind of come together in an emotional flashback and really kind of affect our lives if you're healing from a complex PTSD. So you kind of get in this cycle of reactivity. And I was talking with a client the other day about this and having to figure out how to stop that. Because even when you remove some of the triggers for these, like say it's a toxic relationship with an ex-spouse or a family member, you can get into those same triggers with other people, like in the workplace, and then you have continual problems because you're getting in those cycles of reactivity where you get that kind of depression and abandonment feel, especially if you feel unsupported in any relationship, whether it be friendship, workplace, or intimate relationship. And then that depression and abandonment feels like fear and shame. And then the inner critic starts telling you all these bad things about yourself. And then you get into that trauma response, the ones that we've talked about, the fight, flight, fawn, and freeze trauma responses. And I'm going to link those above as well so you have connections to those if you need to review them. So just think about those trauma responses in that cycle, and then you've, of course, when you're in a trauma response, it disconnects you from others. So that leads to more abandonment and abandonment of the self. So that's why it's so important to figure out, okay, how to manage this kind of cycle. The other thing that the cycle kind of encourages is that it dissociates us from that voice of the inner critic, which is something that we want to do and gets us kind of into this kind of overall overwhelming emotional pattern. And we really need to deconstruct that pattern because we want to kind of separate that out and calm the inner critic and improve our processing of those feelings. And we have to differentiate between depressed thinking, which is that kind of inner critic, negative, fear, shame, all of that, and depressed feelings. Sometimes depressed feeling, we need to feel that, and it can tell us or point us in the direction, give us some intuition of to what something is that we need to change in our lives. Work environment, relationship, those kind of things. If that persists, then something needs to change in that particular part of our environment. So something to think about. Now, one of the best ways to start healing from this kind of abandonment depression is mindfulness, and I've talked about that off and on, but getting that mindfulness is a way to help kind of digest those and metabolize those feelings. You have to feel in what's going on in the body, and it's the ultimate thought stopping. And I think I've talked about this in a couple of videos, because when you are dropping into your body and figuring out how you really feel and where the tension is and what's going on, then you are able to kind of move through those emotions, and they will change. And they will stop that obsessive thinking that you might be struggling with as it goes on and on and on. And you're worried about whatever it is that's going on in your life. When you stop and ask yourself how you feel and try to work on in the body and to sit with that feeling, it will shift and change. It just takes some time. And you may have to do it multiple times to shift away from the thinking and back to the body. And it's like a skill like anything else. It takes practice. So the big thing is to learn to sit with that feeling and what's going on in the body and kind of experience, because we store things in our body whether we like it or not. They're there. So sitting with that is really important. Another thing to kind of consider about these feelings of abandonment and depression is that they can masquerade as other things. And one of the big ones is hunger. Okay, I work a lot with people that are struggling with eating patterns, and one of the things I work on with them is to try to figure out what are they self-soothing is some of the words we use. Are they self-medicating? You hear that term sometimes. And yes, there is some indication that food addictions and eating, of course, is going to hit our feel-good centers of the brain and kind of help us kind of ignore those negative things, and that's what goes on scientifically. But it can also cover up an emotional longing for a safe connection. And if you're having problems with connecting because you have toxic relationships and things like that, then that nurturing connection is missing, and you try to nurture yourself with food. And that happens more frequently than we care to admit. So part of that is kind of differentiating where are you feeling the hunger. If you're feeling the hunger actually in more lower than your stomach, so your stomach sits kind of right under your diaphragm, and that's going to feel, that's where your true hunger is. If you start to feel something lower, like in your in your small intestine, that's not true hunger. That's that emotional connection. And then maybe what you have to do is reach out to somebody that is healthy for you rather than to eat. If you don't have anyone that's healthy, that's something that you need to work on. So some things to consider if you're dealing with kind of emotional eating issues. A lot of people also believe that attachment is at the core of the addictions, not just the hunger one that we just talked about, but also just addictions themselves. It's a longing for attachment to something, and you cover up that feeling. I mean, we always talk about the addictions, whether they be process addictions, like having to do something all the time, or if they're drugs, alcohol, any of that, they are there to cover up the feelings of what we're missing and this abandonment depression. So we have to kind of watch those things so we don't get into those negative habits of covering those feelings of abandonment and loss with something else, such as busyness or exercise or eating or drugs or alcohol, all of that. And to recognize that and heal that is one of the first steps, and then to begin to develop healthier relationships and identify those is something real important in order to move on. So with that, we need to just kind of consider what's kind of also going on in the body and what we're feeling so that we don't get stuck. Another thing also to consider is what else you're feeling, like emotional tiredness. That's another good one that a lot of people feel. They're just emotionally exhausted despite sleeping well. I've experienced that, and I'm like, I'm really tired even though I'm eating well and I'm sleeping well. So why am I still waking up tired? Am I missing something? Of course, I'm all into nutrition and health, so I'm always worried about what I'm missing nutritionally. But a lot of times I have to stop and think, okay, what's else is going on in my life? Do I not feel safe somewhere? Because we can often feel very emotionally tired if we do not feel safe in a resting relationship, be able to rest in a really safe and safe relationship. So if your relationships around you are in turmoil and you don't feel safe with them, you are going to feel tired all the time until you find a safe relationship. And maybe it needs to start with a safe relationship with yourself so that you can then open up into a safe relationship with somebody else, whether it be a friend or a coworker or a family member or something like that, or even an intimate relationship. So that can be really difficult if you're kind of trying to get rid of the toxic people in your life and find the people that are there to support you. That can be really, really exhausting because you're on the ups and downs of all of that. So those are some of my tips and ideas on how we're going to kind of manage that abandonment depression and be aware of it. So please connect with me on the website if you need more coaching and help around this. I'll definitely hook you up there. Otherwise, please pay attention for more videos as they come out. We'll keep going over some of these ways to kind of work with trauma and heal with our best intentions of to have our best life possible. So with that, everybody have a great day, and we'll see you soon.